wish that I could tell people that it's going to be all right if they do this. But then I can't, of course. And then I think to myself, if I could, I mentioned, if I could give a pill to you, and then you'd suddenly say, oh, it's going to be all right, everything's going to be fine. Would that really draw forth from you the full creativity and courage of which you are capable? Would it? No. So it's that knife edge of uncertainty that keeps us awake.
Zolang ik leef hoor ik berichten dat het einde van de wereld nabij kan zijn. De atoombom, lekkende kerncentrales, klimaatveranderingen. Het goede nieuws is natuurlijk dat we er nog zijn. Maar iedere nieuwe calamiteit leidt bij de meeste mensen die ik ken tot het verlangen om je kop maar in het zand te steken. Ik besluit om Joanna Macy op te zoeken. Joanna is een Amerikaanse boeddhist die al meer dan 50 jaar onvermoeid op de bres staat voor het milieu. Ze heeft een methode ontwikkeld om tegelijkertijd de ecologische en sociale crisis onder ogen te zien. Zonder daardoor in apathie, wanhoop of cynisme te vervallen. Ze noemt dit het werk dat verbindt. Joanna is inmiddels 88 en geeft nog steeds trainingen. Reizend door Amerika kom ik in contact met verschillende mensen die sterk door haar beïnvloed zijn. Ieder probeert op zijn eigen manier een persoonlijke uitdrukking te geven aan het werk dat verbindt.
When I first came back from the island, all I had was a whole body of photographs of birds whose bodies are filled with plastic. And I had never seen a live albatross at that point because I was on the island at a time when all the birds are gone. And I came back from that trip and I published my photographs of the birds filled with plastic. And I was devastated by what I had seen. And my work went viral on the internet. And I started receiving thousands and thousands of emails from people all over the world telling me that it made them feel hopeless. And it broke my heart because I want my work to be inspiring to people. And they were writing things that said it made them feel trauma and despair. And the most powerful moment was in a school in Australia. I went to Brisbane for a conference called the Ideas Festival, and when I was there, I was invited to speak at a girls' school, a middle school. And I showed my photographs to this whole auditorium full of beautiful little middle school girls all wearing purple dresses. And I hadn't really worked through the trauma myself. I didn't have a philosophy behind my Midway work yet. I just showed them the photographs and talked about how we have to face the realities of our time. And at the end, their teacher stood up in the back of the room and with a microphone, and she said in front of her whole school, she said, "When I see those photographs, I don't feel inspiration, I feel panic." And she broke down crying in front of her whole school. And she said, "Chris, would you please just tell me, how do we get to hope from here?" I still feel it. How do we get to hope from here? And it was dead silent in the room, and I had no answer. I didn't know what to say. I don't know how to get to hope from here. And the only thing I could think of at the moment to tell her is that's a really courageous question. So I came home from that trip, and I had this body of photographs, and I wanted to publish a book. And I wanted a piece of writing that went with the book that would be hopeful. And I thought of Joanna. And I went to Joanna, and I asked her, you know, can you write a couple of paragraphs of beautiful Joanna Macy writing that will get to hope from here? And she looked at the photographs with me, and we cried together. And she said, I can't get you to hope from here. But she said, I know where you can go. And I said, what is it? And she said, you have to go back to that island. There's more to the story. There's something there that you haven't seen yet. And that felt right. It's like I heard a bell ring in the back of my mind. I was like, yes, you're right. I have to go back and meet the live birds. And that's what turned into my whole rest of my project, including my film.
What we need to do, quite simply, is to help each other experience our deepest responses to what we see and know is happening to our world. Now, these responses of anguish, sorrow, anger, guilt may not necessarily be about nuclear weapons, first and foremost. For some people, it is the condition of the environment, is the erosion of our life support system, the expiring species, etc. For others, it could be the rising incidence of human oppression, the suffering, the torture, the hunger that we see around the world, our intervention in Nicaragua, in El Salvador, etc., etc. When we can express that, say that out loud, tell that truth, be truthed by that in our deepest responses, then two things happen. First of all, we see that we're not alone, that our brothers and sisters experience that too, that this is a universal and wholesome human response. That makes a big difference. And then also we experience that, like all emotions, these are fluid, dynamic. We aren't stuck in it. We're not going to fall apart, shatter in 1,000 pieces. And we emerge, having gone through that, with the knowledge that we can take it, that we're tough. It's not that we'll never again experience the despair. We will, because of the nature of the world that we live in. But we will no longer be afraid of experiencing it.
Right in the middle of the North Pacific is this tiny little island. And I think that's why they call it Midway. This is the furthest you can get from human civilization anywhere on planet Earth, including the North Pole. And it's scary. They're so big. It's, you know, it's like, imagine going, I'm shooting this with a 16mm wide angle, focused maybe that far in front of the lens. This is not with a telephoto, it's with an ultra wide. So I'm right, like this far from it, and it could easily just rip my eyes right out. But they just don't have that aggression, and they don't have that fear. And so if you stay down low and don't make, like if you make direct eye contact, then they get a little scared, they do this. But if you stay down low and just kind of don't disturb them at all, you can get closer and closer and closer and closer with the camera and focus until it's all the way, until you hit the stop. And this is what it looks like. It's so interesting to see a wild creature that expresses curiosity. It seems to me a very high function. And you know, it's such an interesting thing to look so closely at a large bird and see something so different than what you see when you look at an eagle. And here in the Pacific Northwest, where I live, all of the kind of iconic wild creatures are predators. So the eagle, a wolf, coyote, owl, orca, they're all predators. And we've all seen the eyes of the eagle. Like they have this incredible kind of spiritual intensity. And the same thing with a wolf. They look at you and there's just this intensity to it. And look at this creature. There's this soft, round sort of grace to her that is so different.
Quiet friend who has come so far. Feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you, the bell. And as you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. So swing back and forth into the changes. What's it like, this intensity of pain? Oh, if the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow, and to the rushing water speak, I am. Rilke, and particularly the Stundenbuch, the Book of Hours, and where he opens his heart to the world and to a God who is not separate from the world, a God that is not up there in heaven with angels and trumpets and gold robes and throne, but who says, as I lean over the chasm of myself, my God is dark. And like a web, 100 roots silently drinking. So he used these images of the natural world for God. So we drew a lot of, we're asked now to return to our world. That can save us. Maybe it won't save our world or us, but it'll be where we belong, even if we have to, even if we're not sure that we will be able to save life and the web of life. It's where we belong, our living world, with its beauty and its intricacy, its pulsing heart.
Als ik in Portland ben aangekomen, word ik geattendeerd op een uniek natuurverschijnsel, wat zich slechts een paar weken per jaar voordoet. Tienduizenden zwaluwen strijken in de schemering neer in de schoorsteen van een oude school. Elke dag verzamelen honderden mensen zich hier om naar dat spektakel te komen kijken. Het lijkt me een doorsnee van de Amerikaanse bevolking. En ik grijp het moment aan om eens te vragen welke gevaren zij voor de wereld zien.
The biggest threat of the world. Well, the UN just said today it was antibiotic resistance. That's pretty big. Probably that or global warming, I would say.
I'm concerned that reasonableness won't prevail sometime, and then there'll be an accident. And under those circumstances, you could have a conflagration that would end the world.
You know, these problems, how are we going to end war and end poverty and end these things? And it's by forcing ourselves to sit there and think about it, and that's how we're going to do it. And I noticed a lack of that, I feel like, lately, where people aren't doing that. They aren't sitting and forcing themselves to think. If they don't get the answer right away, they're just done.
Hold on, give me a second. I had it a second ago. People aren't thinking for themselves. They're looking out only about themselves, and they don't care what other people, the greater good, the spirit of the greater good is gone.
I think that global warming and a lack of respect for our world and the environment is a huge threat.
I think as the world gets closer to that time frame, it's going to get more and more corrupt. And I see all of that looking at the drug problems and the murders and killings and all those things going on in the world of turmoil as just an example of what God has in store for judgment time for the world.
Hold on tight, don't let go of the wheel. Driving through life with a cracked windshield. Got to figure out what's wrong with these brakes. Speeding so fast, 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 just about to get the shakes. Down a dangerous road and it's getting worse. How do we put this thing in reverse? I wish I could fix just a small part. I wish I could fix just a small part of this broken world. We need a doctor, some kind of mechanic. Try to stay cool, no need to panic. Taking those lies they pulled from a hat. Figure out a way to put them back. Find some peace and compassion. Start bringing love back into fashion. I wish I could fix just a small part. I wish I could fix just a small part of this broken world.
When things are getting warmer and when more and more people are losing home, people on the front lines, more and more of us are on the front lines of the pain of the world right now. And there's the uncovering of the people who've always been traditionally the racial justice issues, but there's more and more people emerging, people living in island nations who will have no homes, people who are, struggling with asthma in urban communities because of the pollution and that kind of thing. So how do we be with all of that? That's the challenge, and I don't have any answer. I go in and out of my version of despair all the time because I pay attention. I was just talking with my partner the other day about just really in the midst of feeling just the weight of the world. but that's how you have to go through that. You know, that's part of the practice, is like honoring that pain, because it means I'm not separate from the world.
Something. Are you feeling uncomfortable?
Those of us who are paying attention particularly to climate change are aware of the reality that we're probably past the point of saving the world as we know it. And to live with that every day and still continue to move on is the challenge. To have that knowledge is the challenge of our times right now. And how do we stay present to the world? As Joanna says, who will we be? For me, the question is not so much like what are we going to get, what successes will we have, but no matter what happens, who will we choose to be? So that's the work that I do in the activist community. I've been pushing within this climate justice group that I work with that we can try to make successes around stopping this oil terminal or stopping this gas storage facility or stopping this pipeline. But there's another piece around how are we going to be with each other and how are we going to be with each other when things don't go well.
This land, you can see the stumps. This land was completely clear-cut 20 years ago this summer, as most of this island was. This was the second cut, so this land was cut, completely mowed in the 20s or 30s, and then again in 1996. And we really still feel the grief of the land for that. I think everybody knows they're not connected. I think people know it in their bodies. Most people do. And many people are searching in lots of different ways about how to tie our communities and ourselves, knit each other back together in that fabric. You know, the people that come to the work that reconnects are usually activists already, struggling with burnout and despair already. And that's how it was for me. I came to this work because I was an activist and still am, and I was overwhelmed by the enormity of what I was trying to do. And this work has become, it's what enables me to do my work, actually. I couldn't continue to do the work that I do without the work that reconnects, and I think a lot of people feel that way who are in the work already. Joanna talks about the 3 dimensions of the Great Turning. So there's what we call holding action. So that's traditional activism, putting our bodies on the line to make change or whatever it might be. And then there's basically seeing with new eyes, so not subscribing to capitalist, materialist perception, and that is respectfully engaging in other wisdom traditions that carry that knowledge, like Buddhism or different types of indigenous spiritual traditions. And then the 3rd dimension of the Great Turning is building or creating or seeding sustainable or regenerative structures like retreat centers or businesses or organizations, that we do that in a new way that's not dominated by a colonizing mentality. For me, I don't speak for others with regard to the path of meditation, but for me, the ability to be present with clear eyes and open heart with whatever is happening in the world, in my own experience, in my family, is a fundamental skill and practice that we need for the Great Turning. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. I'm trained in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, so that's my way. That we actually can be still and face the situation that we're in. We can. I think there's a lot in capitalism that is impoverishing and makes people think that they can't stand to look, they can't stand to feel. And Buddhism is so powerful because it gives us this gift that, yeah, we have the capacity. We can be here. Honoring our pain is, so it's more than just facing our pain, right? Joanna used the word honoring because it's not just saying, oh, this is terrible and it's a problem and I just have to face it. It's saying, like, I feel, I suffer, and because my people and our world are suffering. And I honor that as evidence of the truth of interdependence. We are all connected. And so we honor our pain because that is the reality of where we are as a world and in many of our communities. And that's where meditation practice or other types of spiritual practices are so important, because we need to feel that we're big enough to honor that pain and that we're big enough to feel the interdependence that's the reality of interconnection. And in a world that has been coming apart for a very long time, it's hard to feel that interconnection. People want to cut it off, you know? I want to cut it off. Everybody does. But the gift of the work that reconnects is that we don't have to. Actually, that's therein is our freedom and our ability to do something different together. And you know, maybe we'll make it, or maybe we won't. We don't know, but it feels good to try, to be connected and trying. You know.
It dawned on me like an arrow through the heart that humans, our culture, our economy could destroy the world. That when we were on the way to doing that just that it was possible for humanity, particularly as we're organized now, late capitalist, war-making states, that we could do it. And so that broke my life in half, kind of. And that's when I saw that people didn't want to know what was happening when I was involved in a lawsuit against a nuclear power plant. I was learning so much about what the radioactive emissions, even without an accident, were doing to the human body, not to say nothing of all the other biological beings. I had all this information and I found nobody wanted to hear it. It's not surprising now, but I thought then if we have the capacity to destroy our world and we don't want to know it, then that's really bad news. And so that began the work that brings us together, where we can find ways of speaking from our heart. Because each person, the one they most need to hear is not the statesman, the lecturer, the wise politician, if there are any such thing, but the voice inside them. And then letting that out. So that's been a journey that's been almost 40 years. This is an exercise to enhance our capacity to experience compassion. In other words, it is an exercise to increase our compassion, to experience suffering with the world, to suffer with compassion. So we work with our friend breath, linking the inside with the outside. And we feel it on that breath. We don't try to do anything with it, make it long or short or deep. Images of our brothers and sisters in prisons, in hospitals, in war rooms and missile silos, in barracks, in refugee camps, hunger camps. Images of our brothers and sisters camped outside missile bases, and of those who are within them as well. And as those images arise in your consciousness, what you're going to do is breathe them through on that ribbon of air, like some dark substance. Take that suffering right in on the breath, up through the nose, down through the throat, through the lungs, yes, and through the heart, and out. Remember to let them pass out through the opening in the bottom of the heart, back out into the healing resources of the web itself. Don't hang on to them. Because all you're asked to do for now is to let them pass through your heart.
No time not to love. There are those who want to set fire to the world. We are in danger.
Nuclear weapons have changed the whole psychic landscape in which we move, live, take our being. And that's not just a question of the fear we may feel or may not feel about whether nuclear weapons are going to be used. The very existence of nuclear weapons is an assault on the human heart and mind. They rob us, whatever our politics are, whether we're hawks or doves, whether we work in the Pentagon or the peace movement, the very existence of nuclear weapons in the degree to which we have developed them now robs us of the certainty that there is going to be a future. I consider that this pivotal psychological reality of our time.
I first became interested in Midway when I learned about the Pacific garbage patch. And for quite a few years before that, I'd been making artworks that attempt to visualize these enormous global problems around our mass consumption. And so I learned about the Pacific garbage patch, and I wanted to make some kind of artwork that helps us comprehend the scale of it. And I thought the first thing I wanted to do was go to the middle of the Pacific garbage patch and take a photograph. And I thought the Pacific garbage patch is an island of garbage that you can go and see. And I pretty soon learned from scientists that there is no Pacific garbage patch. It's more like a soup. where there's several million tons of plastic in the Pacific Ocean, but it's all spread out. And most of it is underwater and tiny pieces. And so if you go to the very middle of the Pacific Ocean, all you see is the wide open Pacific. There's no way to visualize the Pacific garbage patch. And during that process of studying it, I learned a place where the Pacific garbage patch surfaces like the tip of an iceberg in the most incredibly macabre and frightening way inside the stomachs of dead baby birds on one of the most remote islands on Earth. One of the things that's so shocking about seeing the contents, the stomach contents of these birds, is that it's our stuff. And in that way, it's different from like trying to save the elephants that are getting killed for their tusks, because that's somebody else doing that. Or like oil companies causing horrible pollution, that's somebody else. But this stuff, like this is our stuff that we use every day, like cigarette lighters, that's a cigarette lighter right there. And then plastic bottle caps, and that's a shotgun shell. And we find pieces of children's toys and the stuff that we recognize that we use every day. And this is one of the things about the Pacific garbage patch and ocean plastic pollution generally that I find so fascinating, is that it's the cumulative effect of every one of us equally contributing to this problem. For me, one of the hardest issues to grapple with is how small each one of us is, how insignificant we are in this incomprehensibly complex and enormous world of billions and billions of people. And, you know, all I can control is my own life and my own consumption. And I have this little voice speaking in my head that says, even if I do everything good, if I never use any more plastic and I become a vegan and I never fly on an airplane again and I sell my car and all of those things, it's not going to make any difference. It's everybody together that will make a difference. And if on the other side, if I behave really badly for the whole rest of my life, if I fly anywhere I want on vacations and eat whatever meat and throw plastic everywhere, that's not going to make any difference either. And so we have this convincing tape playing in our head, at least I know I do, that says that I'm too small to make a difference. And yet, at the same time, the catastrophe that's happening globally is caused by all of us behaving as if we don't make a difference. And so somehow we all do make a difference together. And it's like this paradox. And that's one of Joanna's teachings, is to hold the paradox that we live in and try to find a way through.
Where we're sitting is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I grew up. It was a really interesting place to grow up because it's a city among 18 pueblos, 18 Tewa and Tiwa and Toa pueblos, and those are the tribes that are indigenous to this place. So yeah, growing up, I felt like I was often in two different worlds. When I would go home, where I lived would be in Tesuque, which is 10 miles north of Santa Fe, and that was my tribal community. And then when I'd come in to Santa Fe for school, it was, a modern city, and it often felt like I was going back and forth between two different worlds. About 50 miles north is Los Alamos, where the atomic bomb was made. And this is also land where, this is also a place where there were testings. There are testings for this project. And so across New Mexico, it's, if you took a drive through New Mexico, you would just see the most magnificent views you'd ever see in your life, and it's truly a one-of-a-kind place. But at the same time, what you're not seeing is probably tons of invisible nuclear waste. Whether you're down near Roswell or up in the Navajo Nation, Deneta, or in Los Alamos, just 50 miles from Santa Fe, there is that, there is nuclear waste left, and it's very contradicting because this place is so sacred and so ancient and beautiful, yet there's this invisible destruction just floating around every day. And for the rest of eternity, that stuff is never gonna go away. As I worked through the work that Reconnects, and as I learned, the various practices, I came to realize this traumatic place in my lineage, this place of pain and sadness and anger, and that I hadn't seen before. And what that was pain around the fact that my family has involvement in nuclear energy and nuclear power, my grandfather, Fred Begay, was a nuclear physicist at LANL, which is the National Laboratory in Los Alamos. As I practiced the work that reconnects, it became clear to me that this is something I need to give attention to, that I need to heal, and that I need to honor. I think, for the most part, my family was very proud, respectful of, what my grandpa had accomplished, which was a lot. He was one of the first Diné people ever to get a doctorate. I think, we focused on that pride and honoring, our elder, without really questioning, the work that he did and that he was involved in. Although, his work wasn't towards nuclear weapons, it was towards nuclear energy, but still, nuclear energy has caused tons of environmental damage, irreversible damage. So, for me, practicing the work that reconnects is a way to honor that part of my history and my lineage, and so that it doesn't, become something that weakens me or something that is unrecognized in me. So yeah, by giving it recognition, by honoring it, I think I can be a stronger person and heal that past that my family has.
When we were in India, and I was able to meet and work with Tibetans, it was the 1960s. And they just recently come over the high mountain passes over the Himalayas. And I was working with a Peace Corps volunteer friend. How can we help this group from Eastern Tibet? There were lay people and lamas and yogis. How can we help them stay together? Because they were taking care of each other. And we didn't want them to be scattered into residential schools, camps, or road gangs. And so that has been very transformative in my life. This very afternoon, when I'm going to be teaching at this retreat, I'm going to be speaking of what I learned from them. Courage I learned. Courage I love. Courage is on the tanka behind us in the Manjushri Celestial Bodhisattva. It's facing what is there. He is facing the dukkha, the suffering of the world, but with good heart, because he has a belief, he's holding that sword that can cut through the denial and the obfuscation and look at it. Because if we just look at it clearly, and that's what I saw in the Tibetans, this open face, they would look you back in the eye. And now I often say in the work that our presence to the world is the greatest gift we can give. Not our smarts, not our man-made solutions, but just our full presence.
On this street, we took down the fence that was here when we bought this house, and we had a community event. We had food and art, and the neighbors and the kids came and made the bricks, and we built the beds, and we grow food here, and it's our little community garden and our little witness. We're just here trying to be neighbors, and people build fences because they see other people build fences, so we're hoping they'll take them down. And in the meantime, we have a vision of a food forest on this street where people could grow food and gift it to each other. So that's what we're trying to start here with our little garden. At the park right down there that you can see, there were 2 people who were killed not that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and someone around the corner was killed recently. So it's not uncommon to hear gunfire at night and for people to be killed here. So that's one of the things that we live with. My children are actually 5th generation in my family in this neighborhood. So we've been here, you know, from Switzerland. You know, my great-grandparents came and settled here. It was a very different, it's always been an immigrant neighborhood. And originally this was indigenous land that we're all on. So I've been here for a long time and seen a lot of changes. And we could, you know, my family, we have the privilege of, we could go somewhere else. So we choose to stay because because we couldn't go, we choose to stay. But a lot of people here can't get out of here, and especially when they're afraid for their children and wanting safety.
How many pieces are more? 5, 6. Oh!
And I brought some kids from this street over here one day, and as we walked across here, I said, now you are on another street. And their eyes got really big. And, you know, for them, walking from this street through here into here, and they got about halfway up the garden, they said, it's like Cinderella. You know, they couldn't, like, it was like walking into the enchanted forest. When's the last time you saw a piano in a backyard? You think if you all come help, we could get it in there? What do you think?
How heavy is it?
It's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy.
Like this whole house?
No.
I don't know. I think that one, I think. Oh! ¿Esta? No. How do you know? Que no sea dura.
And in this house is where we have our community dinners, and upstairs is where we have our workshop space and where some of the community members live. And this is where in this house where Joanna teaches. If I had never done anything with her again after that one workshop, it was life-changing for me, because it was the first place that, you know, she was really the first person who gave me permission to have like all these feelings and to help me understand it was my love, it was my care, it was not a weakness. It wasn't that I was overreacting or too emotional or too sensitive, or it was, you know, of course it's a scary, terrifying thing to live in a world where we could blow ourselves up. And of course, I was full of grief and rage and all sorts of other, you know, feelings about this, and feeling powerless and wanting to stop it and grieving what had happened to the planet because of it. So that permission to actually feel, experience, and know that those feelings were my power and my strength to act on behalf of life was life-changing for me.
¿Cómo estás? Van a venir. Ay, mira, se atoró.
This is homemade food that we have, you know, with these lentils and tortillas and salsa that we eat today.
Hola, hermanito, ¿cómo estás? Right, I'm just here for all love magicians and love warriors here, man. That's beautiful. Good to see you. Good to see you too, brother. My beloved.
Good. Yeah.
Lebanese
These are one of our favorite farmers, because not only because they grow organic, healthy food, but they grow healthy, organic relationships and love.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's this not only labor, it's labor of love. So here's
thank you.
The farmers, they wake up at 3 a.m. and they haven't eaten anything. So we know that they really would like to go back to their home. So we said, let's help them. Let's help them, to clean up, to carry boxes, and we just start doing that. And it turns out that at the end, they say, hey, we have like 5 boxes of leftover food that it could go to the compost or to you, like take it. And we was like, sure. And then we noticed that they haven't eaten anything. So we start cooking food for them. It's organic, hyper-local food. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
When I lived on this block, it was like grass that wasn't really being taken care of. And then we did this project where we planted all these fruit trees here. A lot of people in this neighborhood already have like agricultural wisdom and traditions, but didn't have a space to express that. And people had a few potted plants outside their apartments on the inside. When we do specifically a lot of ceremonial plantings, where sometimes we just plant like one tree, but it's all about the way we're planting it. And we've done those as like, we call them like restorative justice plantings, because we've done them when there's been a shooting in the neighborhood, and then work with the family members and community members to come together and plant a tree and put new life and like commemorate that person's life, hard and difficult when something like so tragic like that happens, and it affects so many people's lives. And to be able to do something positive together and to recognize that pain that is present, not just try to cover it up or something. People are like, I've never done this before. I've never sat with a stranger and talked to them about my deepest pain, my deepest like regrets, or my deepest like hopes for the world.
And we get them, and so we warm tortillas. The things that you saw there is like tortillas. Gracias a ustedes, Adiós, adiós. Adiós, adiós. Oh, uy, oh. Adiós, saludos a Yola, tuya tos. Adiós. And so we start giving them, food, and they really enjoy it. And then they start giving us more food. And so all these that you see is mostly from these farmers markets, which is really obscene that in this part of the planet, where the government imposed in the part of the planet we call the US is allowing that you have 40% of all the food, not any food, organic healthy food, let alone the other ones, is thrown away. When you have people like this that could very well use that, because if you want to go around here and find organic food in Fruitvale in East Oakland, good luck. You can find prostitution, you can find drugs, you can find guns, and you have a harassment by the police, and people are being killed. But if you would like to have that, we don't.
You really can't tell whether the ways in which an action are effective, what the results are. You don't know. So it's not, there are things that people have said to me or I've heard that have changed my life. They don't know it. There are things you've done that have changed lives. You don't know it. So it's much better to stop taking your pulse all the time. Oh, how effective am I? Just be glad you can act. And don't decide whether it's worth it or not. Do it because it feels good. Do it because you love being with the people who are at your side.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Hay muchas, pueden llevarse 4 o 5. There's a lot of pomegranate. You can